For the first time in 4 years, the Montreal Canadiens play in a playoff series, this time versus the Washington Capitals. Not exactly the finish we were hoping for, but a lot of positives around the table. Time to drop the puck on Montreal Hockey Talk. Hey everybody, for those of you celebrating, happy Easter. And for the rest of you, well, you know, it is what it is. It was an up and down type of game, I would say, today. The Capitals getting out to a 2-0 lead. And then the Canadiens soaring back in the third. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the Canadiens lose in overtime by a score of 3-2. Ovechkin getting 2 goals and an assist. But there was a lot of positives to bring out of this hockey game. And it starts with, number one, the goaltending of Sam Montembeault. Down the stretch, I haven't been too happy with the way Montembeault has played. He's given up a lot of rebounds, a lot of soft goals. Tonight, I got to give it to him. He was solid. Despite the fact that the Capitals did score and a couple of rebounds, overall, his game was quite good. He made saves when he needed to. He didn't look out of position, other than maybe one shot from Ovi that he literally had to slide across to make that stop. But by and large, it's the type of playoff performance you would expect from a number one goaltender. So before I say anything else, thank you, Monty, for a great performance. Keep it up, and we're going to push that aside because goaltending was certainly not the issue from the Montreal Canadiens tonight. I think off the top, a lot of the kids, and I mean it when I say kids, were restless and nervous, whether it was Caden Gooley, whether it was, the captain, Nick Suzuki, or Cole Caulfield, Juraj Slafkovsky playing in his first playoff series, Demidov playing in his first playoff series, Lane Hudson, Jaden Struble, the list goes on and on. At the end of the day, there were a lot of young kids that didn't have very much playoff experience. And, even Christian Dvorak, I think, had maybe about 6 or 7 games of playoff experience. I'd have to look it up, but not very much. But given that, early on in the hockey game, you could see it, including veterans like Mike Matheson, who was fumbling with the puck the entirety of the first and second period. He didn't look very comfortable out there, and that was due to, in part, to the fact that the Washington Capitals were forechecking and being physical early on in the hockey game. And it looked like the Canadiens just didn't want to get involved from that perspective. And with a team like Washington, where you've got the league's all-time leading goal scorer who's not afraid to get down and dirty, drop the gloves when he has to, lay a hit when he has to in Alex Ovechkin, you know that his entire team is going to follow his example. So if he comes out physical like he did, then other guys like Tom Wilson, Anthony Beauvillier, and the list goes on and on will do the same. And that's exactly what they did. They came in hard on the forecheck. They limited the amount of time the Canadiens had to retrieve pucks and get them out of the zone effectively. And that created scoring opportunities early on for Washington. And, they got that early goal from Alex Ovechkin. It was exactly what you'd expect. It was a carbon copy almost of his record-breaking goal where Strome passed the puck over to the right side onto the stick of Tom Wilson. Wilson went through the seam over to Ovechkin, who one-timed it. It went off the heel of Savard's skate, but nonetheless, it found the back of the net, and it was 1-0 Washington. And a lot of people on the internet were blaming Savard for not blocking the shot. And to a certain extent, they're right. Because, myself included, as coaches, you turn around and you tell players, don't block the shot if you can't. If you're not sure of yourself, get out of the way, let the goalie block it. But in this particular case, Savard had the lower part of the net covered, blocked, and it was up to Montembeault to stop the upper shot. Well, what happened was it went off his heel, it knuckled, and it dipped as it came in on Montembeault and went in the net. So nobody to blame. It's happenstance. It happens. But on that goal, the one thing that I did notice was something that the Canadiens also did very often throughout the game, and that is Josh Anderson, instead of remaining with Ovechkin on that power play like he had done at the beginning of that power play, he went across the ice and followed the Strome pass over towards Wilson, leaving Ovechkin open. Therein lies the problem, because as I outlined in our last show, as the season came to an end, forecasting what the Canadiens needed to do to beat the Capitals, the first thing that I said is they need to shadow Alex Ovechkin. And for parts of the game they did, including that power play. There's got to be some credit. Anderson was standing right there Ovechkin in his office, Anderson right next to him. So for a part of it, they did it, but they got away from it. And therein lies the problem. If you know, Josh Anderson, that you are responsible for covering Alex Ovechkin, then for come hell or high water, don't follow the puck. That is not your responsibility. Your job is to cover the grade 8. So get over there. Cover him. Shadow him. If you're on top of him, he's not getting that shot away. He's not scoring. So therein, right there is the problem. Let Wilson have it along the boards. He's not dangerous there. The cross-ice pass to an open Ovechkin is extremely dangerous. So learn to pick your battles a little bit better, and that'll come as the series progresses, including in the next game, because I know the Canadiens are going to make adjustments. There's plenty of them to make. But those mistakes were few and far between. Another thing that I noticed throughout the game, especially early on, was the inability of the Canadiens to provide support to their defensemen to get the pucks out. And what I mean by that is that the pucks were being rimmed around the boards and there were defensemen waiting for them to come to them as opposed to skating to them. And in that, the forwards were exiting the zone a little bit early in order to create a little bit of a gap between them and the first layer of Washington forwards. That creates a problem because if your defensemen don't get to the puck cleanly, if Washington comes in and forechecks a little bit hard, as they did, you tend to have turnovers. That is exactly what happened early on. Now, Montreal started to adjust a little bit later in the first and into the second period, but was nowhere near where it needed to be. And I said this for all season long, and it's something the Canadiens do not do very often, and that is provide support for their defensemen down low. In a conventional breakout, you'll see guys swing down low and curl out towards the boards and skate up the ice. And the defensemen tend to wait. Why? I don't know. A controlled breakout where that happens is a timing play. And if the timing is off, you have to reset. If your forwards don't reset, you have no options. What happens? Well, a good team will recognize that the curl happens and they'll send a forechecker in between the two players to create that delay and force you to make a play you don't want to make. That is where the Canadiens had a problem early in the hockey game. They weren't skating to pucks. They were waiting for pucks to come to them. And instead of being fluid in the way they got the pucks out when they had options available, they decided to wait too long. And that allowed the Capitals to continue to apply pressure, finish their body checks, and create scoring opportunities. Now, again, as I said, the Canadiens are young, inexperienced. So the speed of the game, despite what most people will think, changes from the regular season to the playoffs. When a team is clinched like Washington, from however long it was, I believe they clinched at game like 68 or something. That last stretch of games that they played, you don't see them playing their absolute 100% best hockey. They will play well. They will play absolutely good hockey, but they won't play playoff caliber hockey. Whereas Montreal was fighting for a playoff spot and was in a dogfight all the way till the end, plays a little bit more inspired and plays that brand of playoff hockey that you come to expect. The problem being, though, is that once the Capitals get into playoff mode, the game tends to be a little bit faster. And so the Canadiens need to adapt to that. That's where I think they weren't ready early on in game one. And I think Marty St. Louis will probably admit to that. Again, they're young. It's going to happen. So lay off of them for game one. They played a hell of a hockey game. They outshot Washington. They outplayed them in the third period, managed to get back and tie the game up on goals by Caulfield and Suzuki. So there's a lot of good things that happen, but there are also a lot of bad. We've outlined a few of them. But they're minor things. They're not huge. The Capitals didn't dominate. They didn't blow the Canadiens out of the water. The Canadiens had plenty of scoring opportunities. The Canadiens looked good on their power play. I mean, there were a lot of things you could say, you know what? This wasn't 1 versus 8. This was Washington versus Montreal. And that's where it has to be. It can't be 1 versus 8. Otherwise, Montreal's already lost the series, right? But by and large, the Canadiens played an excellent road game. They stayed competitive throughout. And yes, it was unfortunate what happened in overtime, and I'll get to that in a second, but overall, Montreal was good. Another problem is expecting calls when they're just not going to come. And that comes to where I come into it for the overtime goal. And first of all, Patrick Laine made a mistake just before the icing call that ultimately led to the winning goal, where as opposed to making the right play and chipping the puck off the boards into the Washington zone, when he got to the red line, he decided to try to go cross ice. And what happened was the Capitals swarmed him and took the puck away, turned it back into the zone. The Canadiens managed to get it back. Gouli tried to get it up the line. He gets cross-checked at center. It should have been a penalty call. There's no argument there. But again, it's playoff hockey. And it's overtime, which makes it even less likely you're going to get a penalty unless you get raped or high-sticked. One of the two. And you're not likely to get raped either. But so Roy cross-checks Laine. Laine goes down in a heap, and the puck goes down the ice for icing. Now, Roy could have played the puck as opposed to playing Laine. And there is the argument that the Montreal Canadiens can make. But ultimately, it was Laine that made 2 consecutive bad plays, expecting a penalty call when he shouldn't have. He could have been much more solid on the puck. He could have made sure he made contact, but he didn't. And instead, like I said, waiting for the puck to come to you instead of skating towards the puck. If Laine would have turned away from where he was and went more towards the middle of the ice instead of staying on the boards, it would have given Gouli the chance to skate the puck up the ice, possibly get it deep, and also give Laine the momentum to get in there and get in on the forecheck. None of that happened. Instead, you got to face off in the Canadian zone with Demidov, Laine, and Newhook at center. Newhook not known for his face-off prowess. Washington wins the draw. The puck goes down low, shoots out in front to a wide-open Alex Ovechkin. How he got that open, no clue. Nonetheless, he hits the puck in out of midair, overtime win, and away goes Washington with game 1. But as I said, a lot of positives. Get away from waiting for the puck to come to you. Be more aggressive in puck retrieval, and things will go much better. You can't wait, especially in the playoffs. You cannot wait for the game to come to you. You have to dictate what you want to do. If you want to be a physical team, then you got to soft dump the puck into the zone, get in there in the forecheck, and hammer guys. If that's not the game you're going to play in, you're going to play a more possession style of hockey. You got to make sure when you rim the puck into the zone hard, you've got 2 guys coming in on the opposite side to retrieve it, so that you have one that engages physically and tries to get the puck, and the second guy who's there in support immediately. That didn't happen, and so the Canadiens had that issue, right? And then thirdly, you can carry the puck into the zone. That didn't happen very often for Montreal either. And when they did do it, why they do this all the time, I have no idea. They stop when they get inside the blue line. There's one player in NHL history who was able to come in across the blue line, curl back, and create open space for himself, and that was Wayne Gretzky back in the 1980s and early 90s. That game has come and gone. Hockey is no longer played that way. Guys are bigger, stronger, and faster. So you can't expect the delay to work. Can it work? Occasionally. But when you do it all the time, and then you try to make a cross-ice pass, teams begin to wait for it and create turnovers going back the other way. Again, Laine did it early in the first period. I wanted to throw something at my TV, but again, early in the first period. They got away from that. And other than those 2 mistakes, Laine had a relatively solid hockey game. But overall, everybody managed to get their composure. The jitters were out of the way after the first period was done. The Canadiens came out behind by 1 goal, and that was a good place for them to be, considering they were playing in Washington's barn. So I think Marty St. Louis was probably pretty happy with that first period, especially given that they got more than 4 shots on goal. Like I said, they outshot Washington in the hockey game. A lot of positives to come out of here. At the end of the day, though, the one positive they didn't get as a result, Washington comes away with a 3-2 victory. Off we go to Wednesday night when we play that game. But now let's get to something else. And that is the fact that the Habs did outshoot the Capitals, but it's really about the quality of the shots that I worry about. And something that I emphasize all the time, make sure you win the middle of the ice. When you get shots, try to get the shots from inside the house. And I'm repetitive. And I'm pretty sure all of you out there who've been watching the show long enough know that I get repetitive with that stuff. And here's the proof in what I'm talking about. This heat map provided by naturalhattrick.com. Naturalstattrick.com. Let's give the credit where credit is due. And if you look at the graphic as it is on the screen, you get a heat map of where the shots came from for each individual team. And if you look at the Montreal Canadiens, most of their shots, if not all, I would say about 90%, came from outside the house. Those are the areas where you see more green, so along the boards, at the point, and just outside the dots. If you look at Washington, they've got a lot of red in and around the 5-foot area around the Canadiens' net. And therein lies kind of the discrepancy that I keep talking about, where you need to get shots from quality areas on the ice. You look at where Ovechkin scored from, and that's the G that's on the upper part of the capital side of the graphic. That's where Ovechkin scored the first goal from. The last 2 goals came from in tight. So you expect the area from where Ovechkin normally shoots to be a little bit hotter than everywhere else. That's his office. So granted, that's going to be hot as hell. But in front of the net, you see all that heat. And those come from shots in tight, rebounds, and plays as such. If you look at Montreal, there's a little bit of dark blue, but not very much. Nowhere near what you see as far as the capital shot selection is concerned. And therein lies most of the problem. If your shots are going to come from the perimeter and your shots are going to come from the outside, you're not going to get quality scoring opportunities. Now, Caulfield's goal, a lucky bounce off a couple of skates right to his stick, bang, he puts it in. And then the Suzuki goal was all kinds of patience from Nick Suzuki on a scramble. Well, he scored it from pretty far out. When he waited, he shaded away from most of the traffic and ripped it into an open cage. But other than that, there's not much as far as shots from the house area that we call it, right? From the posts out to the dots, out to the top of the circles and across. Canadians don't get that many shots from there. Most of their shots come from the outside. Time and time again, I say that Lane Hudson gets that opportunity to step up in between the circles in the slot and decides to dish instead of shoot. That's got to change. Not just for his own sake, but for the team's sake, because it becomes predictable when he steps up, and all they expect him to do is dish left or right. He's got to intrinsically make it different. And so when you create that variety, you create confusion. And when you create confusion, you create openings and scoring opportunities. Canadians didn't do that very much. They got lucky in the third period. They pushed hard. They came back like they did all. I think they did it 8 times after the Four Nations Cup. So there it is. The Canadians have the capability of coming back, and they can believe they can come back. But the thing is that there's so many minute little details that they avoid that they could actually play a hell of a lot better than they actually do. And that's the biggest issue that I have with Montreal, is that you can't really blame them because they're getting shots on goal. They didn't create very many rebounds. Logan Thompson was all night. He was giving the puck up because you could see he wanted to play it as opposed to smothering it. So instead of waiting for him to play it, they would come in hard and they would force the referee to blow the whistle just before he played the puck. And, when you can recognize those opportunities, take them when you get them. I mean, hover. You don't have to come in hard on the forecheck. If you know the goaltender is going to play the puck and he doesn't like to smother it so he can get a face-off, then, you know what? Do what you have to do. And I think that's probably a message he got from his coach, because knowing that Montreal, especially Dvorak and Suzuki and Evans, are pretty solid in the face-off dot, better than what the Capitals are. I mean, he probably recognized, like, hey, I don't want those defensive zone face-offs, so when you can, play the puck. But that's a when you can thing. And so Montreal has to take advantage of that if that's the message that Logan Thompson was given from his coach. We don't know that, but we saw it 3 or 4 times that the whistle blew just as Thompson tried to play the puck. And so when you're Montreal, you back off a little bit, and when he does play the puck, that's when you pounce. That's not what happened, but that's something that they should adjust for in the coming game. The other thing, too, is as opposed to skating to the outside, they've got to make sure they cut inwards to get better shot selection and better looks at the net. Thompson was good, but he wasn't great. He looked like he was good up high on his blocker side. He looked like he was pretty solid on his glove. But down low, he was giving up rebounds, and the Canadians could take advantage of that. So get in there. Get your nose dirty. Take a couple of shots. Create that havoc in front. Force the defenseman to make plays. Draw penalties. Those are all little things that make a big difference in the playoffs, but the Canadians just didn't do it tonight. Again, not a bad hockey game, but small things that the Canadians can correct, give themselves a better advantage, right? Now, like I said earlier, the young guys looked very young to start the hockey game. And it kind of started with Lane Hudson, especially on that first power play where he skated up the ice with the puck. He got beyond the red line, turned back, and really didn't have the slingshot available to him. And what did he do? He forced it back. Suzuki picked it up and had nowhere to skate with the puck and ultimately gave it away almost right away. That is just a microcosm of what I'm talking about when it comes to their youth. A more experienced veteran player, like let's say a Mike Matheson, for lack of a better player to bring up, might have turned that one back and reset the slingshot. Not that I'm a fan of the slingshot. I will bring that up again until my day's end. But, you know, there's always things that you can do to give yourself an advantage. Poise is a very strong tool for any hockey player. A guy with Lane Hudson's IQ on the ice should have that ability to recognize that, hey, I'm not going to get the slingshot here. They've got too much pressure on my side of the ice. I'm going to swing back and reset the whole damn thing. And if Suzuki doesn't want to reset, then you turn, you move the puck up ice, and you go conventional. Rim the puck in, have two guys come in on the forecheck. So there's things that you can do to change it up. You don't have to rely on the slingshot as your only way of getting the puck into the zone. And we see it. First unit, second unit, the slingshot is always the way they try to enter the zone. It shouldn't always be the same way. Vary it. It works. Trust me. You know, if I can, just to give you an example, I was coaching a group of 14-year-olds. First time I'd ever met them. I walked into the locker room, I gave them one rule. Don't dump the puck in. And they looked at me and, what? Don't dump the puck in. If you can't get the puck into the zone on your stick, turn back towards our zone and reset. We won that hockey game 9-1. And again, I didn't know anybody on that team. I didn't know who had the skill, who didn't. I just wanted to see how they'd react. And they reacted by figuring it out on their own. They asked questions on the bench. My coaching staff and I gave them the information that they needed to figure out how to get into the zone more fluidly or how to regroup more fluidly. But we didn't tell them how to do it. We just gave them ideas. And they did it on their own. And that's what you have to do at this level. You have to be able to trust your own instincts. That's what my players did. That's what the Canadians need to do. Trust your instincts, because that's what got you to the dance in the first place. It's not the system your coach played when you were playing in college or junior or whatever the case is. It's what you were able to do within that system that really got you there. And so all these young guys who are thinking, okay, Marty wants me to slingshot. Marty wants you to slingshot. But Marty doesn't tell you have to. He never will, because he's a concept coach. He's not a systems coach. He'll tell you what he thinks you should do. He'll tell you what he thinks might work. But if it doesn't work, you have to have the wherewithal to be able to create your own way. That's what Marty entrusts into each of his players. That's what we've recognized over the last 3 years. That's why, as he's progressed from year 1 to 2 to 3, he's becoming a better and better coach, because of the fact that he trusts his players and his players trust him. When you have that trust between coach and player, it's great. But when the young players get nervous and the young players start making mistakes, as Hudson did early on, he gave the puck away a couple of times. If you look at some of the mistakes that Mike Matheson did, and he's not a young spring chicken. He made a couple of mistakes. He backed into one of the Washington Capitals without even realizing it, because he didn't turn his head to see where he was. Didn't have any situational awareness. So he moonwalked right into one of the defensemen. Then you've got Jaden Struble. He was a giveaway machine in the first period. But all that to say, it settled down. Even Caden Gooley. Caden Gooley uncharacteristically took a lot of hits early in that first period because Washington was forechecking hard and he didn't have a response. And when you don't have a response, it's very simple. You're taking a little bit too much time in puck retrieval. You're taking a little bit too much time to recognize what's going on around you, and you're taking a little bit too much time to make a decision. If you limit that time that's lost, and you just make decisions more quickly, right or wrong, you're going to be in a better spot. Even if you make a mistake, right? The idea is to make the decision fast enough so that you can correct that mistake. And every time you make a decision on the ice, you should have the foresight to be able to envision where the mistake might be made so you can correct it if you have to. So if you rim the puck around the boards to your left, as an example, right? And as you rim it, you see a guy stepping over to come pick off that shot. Then your first instinct should be to take the closest man to you and cover him to make sure he doesn't get a return pass from that player. Box him out. Make sure he doesn't get in your goalie's eyes. Let him take a long distance shot. Let your goalie stop it. Trust in Montembeault's ability to make that first save. He's capable of doing that. Time and time again, he showed that. But they didn't give themselves enough time to make plays, and they didn't give themselves enough time to correct their mistakes. And that's where Washington lived in the first period. In the second, you could see they were a little bit quicker. They were making the decisions faster. And the game was pretty even through the second period because, again, also there's a long change. The Capitals did manage to score, whatever it is, but the Canadiens did, ultimately play another good period. Then in the third is a complete reversal. The Canadiens were playing with a little bit more desperation, and Washington wasn't ready for it. The Canadiens were making faster decisions with the puck, whether to dump in, whether to carry in, etc. And you could see that Washington had no answer for it. And that should be what dictates the way you play in the next game. If you see Washington gets flustered when they're in their own zone, don't let them do that to you. Do it to them instead. That should be your game plan. If they're thinking, get the pucks in deep, get physical, and separate man from puck and create scoring chances that way, which is what they did, then your job should be, let me get the pucks in deep, or let me carry the puck into the zone with speed. Let me have support from my other forwards, and let's see where we go from there. But ultimately, again, great hockey game by the Canadiens, good hockey game by the Washington Capitals. If this were a regular season road game, I would say it was a great road game played by the Montreal Canadiens. They limited what Washington could do. They came out strong in the third, came back in the hockey game, did all the little things right during that 20-minute stretch. They came up on the short end of the stick in overtime. But there's a lot of positives coming out of this game. The experience factor is one. The first one's done and buried. So now those jitters should be gone. The young guys will be ready for game two. And in speaking about game two, is it going to be more of the same? I think, as I said, Washington's going to start out the game the exact same way. They're going to come out, they're going to get physical early, but I think the Canadiens will adjust. I think they're going to get a little bit quicker in their decision-making. They're going to recognize that they can't wait for the pucks to come to them when they're coming around the boards. They need to skate to the puck and skate through it and bring it back up the other way to create separation between them and the Washington forwards. After all, if you're skating in the opposite direction of your opponent, he's not going to be able to finish a body check. So do that. Also, you need to make sure that you have support. So as opposed to the long cross ice passes that we see time and time again from Montreal as they try to clear the zone, try to get somebody tighter to you. If you're coming up the boards, have somebody in the middle, skating parallel to you. Have somebody behind you, like a defenseman, skating close to you so that if there's nowhere to go with the puck, you can drop back and he can reverse the direction over to the opposite side. Those are all little adjustments that the Canadiens can make to make the game more fluid and more positive in their direction. And the other thing, get your shots from between the dots, fire the pucks on goal, fire the pucks on goal, fire the pucks on goal. Another thing that the Canadiens did very well tonight is they limited the chances for Pierre-Luc Dubois. Okay, one of the other guys I talked about, Anthony Beauvillier, he got a goal tonight, and he assisted on the game winner with Alex Ovechkin. They have to do a better job of covering him. You can't ignore him, right, because he brings a lot to the table. Pierre-Luc Dubois, not a very strong playoff performer, okay, but you do have to make sure you limit the ability of him to be able to be a game breaker. But the most important part, get back to what I talked about. You did it early in the hockey game. Cover Alex Ovechkin at all costs. He's on the ice. Make sure whoever's assigned to cover him is on the ice with him. Doesn't matter what part of the game it is, okay? Unless you're behind and you want to bring the game to the Washington Capitals, you need to make sure that his shadow is on the ice. That's one player. I'm not telling you to change the whole line. But if Josh Anderson is supposed to be the guy covering Alex Ovechkin morning, noon, and night throughout the hockey game, then the minute Ovechkin jumps the boards, the player closest to the bench should jump off, allow Anderson to come on, and cover Ovechkin. And a lot of you out there are going to say, well, that's crazy. It's not. Because if you remember in 1993, right, in games 1 and 2 versus the LA Kings in the Stanley Cup final, the Canadiens were getting manhandled. And Guy Carbonneau went up to Jacques Demers and said, give me Gretzky. He was done after that. Every time Gretzky got on the ice, Carbonneau jumped the boards. Now it's a little bit easier because there was the centerman. Nonetheless, it can still be done. And so what happened? Carbonneau would jump. while Gretzky was on the ice, and Carbonneau shadowed him everywhere. And Gretzky couldn't create anything. Gretzky, of course, not the fastest player. Of course, he wasn't physical by any stretch, but he was extremely smart. And in that sense, Carbonneau is one of the biggest reasons why the Canadiens won the Stanley Cup that year. That and a overly curved stick by Marley McSorley, but that's another story for another day. I was at that game. I love that game. I'm telling you, one of my all-time favorites in my life was Game 2 against the LA Kings. But getting back to Wednesday night, I mean, Logan Thompson, did they do what they were supposed to do against Thompson? They did. Checkmark. Thompson had not played very much. They peppered him with shots. They got opportunities. They got pucks past them. Good, no problem. Checkmark there. Did they pressure the Washington defense? In the third period, they did. But the rest of the game, they didn't. They've got to do better with that. But I still give them a check mark on that. But the guys that they need to cover up front, the Ovechkins, the Dubois, the Beauvilliers, the Mangiapanis. Mangiapane got a couple of good looks tonight as well. You got to make sure you limit their ability to cause damage. All right? If the Washington Capitals have to count on guys like Tom Wilson and Dowd to win them a playoff series, they'll be in trouble. So make sure you stay on the players that you know can hurt you. Cover them. Limit their ability to make plays. You're going to be okay. And if the Canadiens do that, along with being faster at retrieving pucks, they'll win Game 2. And the Canadiens now do absolutely need a split. They can't come home down 0-2 and think they have a snowball's chance in hell of winning this series. They have to split. So Game 2 is going to be pivotal for Montreal, in my mind. And I don't know if you agree. Probably not. But I think it's uber important. And if Montreal wins Game 2 and comes into a rocking Bell Center, Washington's not going to know what hit him. And that is going to be a key as far as the momentum in this series is concerned. But overall, after the way they backed into the playoffs, I was extremely happy with the way Montreal played tonight. And you should be too. Let's see what happens in Game 2. Go Habs, go.